with, but we are here. We are here now. Thank you very much for joining me here on Talk live tonight on IG and YouTube. Tonight is a bit of a bit of a dichotomous night. It's a second side of the coin night, ladies and gentlemen. Throughout these weeks here on Talk Live. Oh, let me say this: like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Sponsored by Dun Talk. Got some vintage Dun Talk on now. And yeah, Spring Summer line out now. So do look out for duntalk.com, duntalk.com. All right, let's get back into this because this is the other side of the coin night. Do let me know out there if my if I'm getting out to you on IG and YouTube. Do comment below as we go on with this show. But this is the second side of this show. Oh, to my member of staff who may know me, if you can just list the message just to let me know that everything is being seen on all platforms, greatly appreciated. Anyhow, back to it. This is the other side of the coin, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, for the last 6-7 weeks, we've been focused on the Diddy trial and Sean P. Diddy Combs being put on trial for 3 counts of the Mann Act, engaging in prostitution over state lines, sex trafficking, and also the RICO charge of racketeering, ladies and gentlemen, for which Diddy was acquitted of the sex trafficking racketeering charge, but yet was guilty of, and it was quite obvious, of the Mann Act violation, that is engaging in prostitution over state lines. But we have now a new revelation. It seems that one of the parties, or the star witness in this case, Cassie Ventura, is now embroiled in a lawsuit herself. She is now a party to a lawsuit by the one named Dave, an escort, for the Diddy's for 8 years, and he has written also a tell-all book with regards to his time with the Diddy's, or I'll call him the Diddy's, but it's actually Cassie Ventura and Sean P. Diddy Combs for an 8-year time span. And he wants to tell his side of the story. So we're going to get into it here on Talk Live. So thank you very much for joining me. So without further ado, let's get into this. Let's not waste any more time. Let me get into the YouTube Big Bang and boom, and we're ready to get on with things and move things over, and we're going to get down with it. So this is a video entitled Cassie's Case Just Got Worse. Shout out to Mediocre Tutorial Reviews for this video. Did a wonderful job, and he's doing wonderful things in these YouTube streets. And a man who should be protected at all costs, for a devotee of Kevin Samuels, who considered him one of his proteges, and quite simply is taken over the mantle and has done well with it. So shout out to Mediocre Tutorial Reviews for this video on Cassie Just Got the Worst News Ever. And let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, we're going to focus in on the suit itself. Just focusing in. Bang, here we go. First of all, we're going to focus in on the suit itself, and what it says within the court documents. And then secondly, we're going to hear from Dave's side. Now, this may be a two-parter, as it is Friday night. So we may have another show tomorrow night. We'll see how the show goes on and progresses. But yeah, it's a barn burner, and you should stay for both sides of the show. So let's get to this side, and that is the side of Dave here, ladies and gentlemen, and the lawsuit and the actual court documents revealing his lawsuit, ladies and gentlemen. As we get into this right here, thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live.
And we gotta go. Cassie's freak apparently knows no bounds. And again, if Diddy is getting prosecuted on all of this, then why is not Cassie? Now, up until this point, we've only seen this male escort, the Punisher, speaking about his experiences in public interviews. But now there's another. And this gentleman is not only speaking about it, but he's suing both Diddy and Cassie for how he's been wronged.
As a man, if I had laid down with a woman and forced myself on her and in her and she got up and it was leaking out of her, guess what? I would have raped her. So by statute, by case law definition, Cassandra Ventura sexually assaulted me. I'm not looking to destroy Cassie. I've given Cassie more than a year to settle this before things got out of control. The problem is she's being supported by women like you who would choose to to attack male victims instead of accept the truth, which is that a woman could have lied to get revenge on the ex-boyfriend who broke her heart and hurt her. It
Who knew? Let's go.
happens, people. They say hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and that's true. If you hurt some women, they will do everything in their power. If you hurt some men, they'll do everything in their power to hurt you. But I want to end this by saying this. Cassie did this to herself. They say he who sets out on the course of revenge should dig 2 graves. People, Cassie dug the grave that is Clayton Howard herself. Cassie got on the stand trying to destroy Diddy. She should have took her $20-30 million and walked into the sunset.
Now, Poetic Flacco, friend of the channel, did an amazing breakdown of the situation, so let's go over to him for the reporting.
Cassie just received the worst possible news she could have ever gotten. And this is coming days after Diddy was acquitted on charges accusing him of trafficking her. This new development could bankrupt Cassie and take away all $30 million that she received for being a victim of Diddy. Back in 2024, when the feds were investigating Diddy for racketeering, trafficking, among other charges, they had a conversation with Cassie. Cassie was cooperative, and the feds asked Cassie to give them a list of names of the male escorts that her and Diddy had freak-offs with. Cassie gave the feds a bunch of names. A lot of the names that Cassie gave was brought up at trial, and some of them was called to testify, one of them being the Punisher. And all the escorts that were called to testify during the Diddy trial, they all testified that Cassie was who booked them and Cassie was who paid them. One escort in particular, Clayton Howard, he took it beyond Cassie just booking him. See, Clayton has a great deal of resentment for Cassie because he feels like Cassie involved him in something by giving his name to the feds that he didn't want to be involved in. So when he spoke to the feds, he went out of his way to notify the feds that he believed that Cassie was a co-conspirator, that Cassie was just as bad as Diddy, and that Cassie used Diddy power to torment the lives of other people.
One, I was in an economic position where I really needed the money. 2, Mr. Combs is incredibly powerful, and Miss Ventura had no problem ending her use of that power, which has actually been revealed now because we've heard recordings of her threatening people. We've seen text messages. There are many different sides to people, and even Cassie is a normal individual. She has herself. There's a side to her that people don't know, the side that manipulated Sean Combs' power, the side that embraced his power and his position to do things that she
wielded it.
So I was always afraid if I stopped coming, then I would start having problems because she threatened me several times not to come and made me feel uncomfortable that I would come to see her just to avoid any problem with Sean Combs. He's incredibly powerful. He has people that could follow me around, damaging my life for years, and it would cost him nothing to do it. So I want to say I continued in the situation, but not as much. There was many times that I did stall them, flake on them as the word goes, and not show up. But I kept the relationship strong enough that they never thought I was trying to turn on them or betray their secret.
Obviously, because he feels this way and has these opinions on Cassie, he was never called to testify. Because it don't look great for your case as a prosecutor to say that Diddy trafficked Cassie when this man is saying that Cassie was just as bad as Diddy in his dealings with Diddy and Cassie. So
I wish that the defense brought him in order to give his perspective in front of the jurors. Not like it would have changed anything. I still think Diddy would have gotten at least transportation. But his testimony paints even a darker picture on who Cassie is and what power of Diddy's that she wielded within that relationship. I've said since the beginning, this sounds more like a toxic domestic violence situation, but Cassie also sounds like the bottom B. Cassie sounds like the madame in the operation, and she wielded his power like a sword. And then when she wanted a payday all of those years later, she moved the final chess piece in a way to have him settle, getting the $20 million, next chess piece, getting $10 million from the hotel. And she was so confident and so brazen and people believing her that she got up on that stand. But now after speaking and picking apart her testimony, the general sentiment has greatly shifted in her participation.
Was never called to testify. He was brought up.
So sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I was dealing with some issues there, but finally got to it. But yes, MCR is right, absolutely right. It seems that the juries saw through Cassie's testimony, and places like TMZ Law and Law and Crime, and many other news outlets, many other legal experts are asking why. Why did they see through this? It looked like an open and shut case. Diddy's a monster. put him in jail. When in fact, what Clayton Howard here is saying is that Cassie was a co-conspirator. I told you that the day the jury, during the trial and the day in which the verdict was sent down from the jury on. The verdict was sent down from the jury on that day, fateful day, with regards to Sean P. Diddy Combs, and the case against him by the U.S. Federal prosecutors. Cassie was the bottom B, indeed. Cassie was the, as he said, the madame, but it was Cassie was. Let me see. Yes, she was the person who basically created all the most of the nights that Diddy and Cassie participated in. Selected the escorts such as Mr. Howard here, and created the nights that in which Cassie was sexually satisfied. But as it goes on here, things get more sinister because Cassie on certain occasions would have nights unto herself with Mr. Clay, with Clayton, and that would let's say Diddy didn't take kindly to that. But let's continue.
In trial, they say that him and Cassie was involved at the Four Seasons, but his testimony, his statements made to the feds was never brought up at trial. He wanted to testify because he had plans on outing Cassie before the trial and during the trial, but the feds did not allow it. Now, here's where things begin to get very tricky.
Before we get into that, yes, Clayton Howard here could have been a tremendous witness for the defense if he was called to the stand. They knew his evidence was damaging to Cassie, their U.S. federal prosecutor's star witness. However, unfortunately, he was never called. It looked like Mr. Agnifilo and et al., his defense counsel, they they were quite confident in the fact that the jury would see through the lies of Cassie, of and of the further witnesses, including, just getting back to it, of Mia and of Jane, of course. Jane being the one who did not want to participate in this prosecution, but she was subpoenaed, so she had to participate. And this would have been a perfect witness for the defense. Many of these escorts would have been perfect witnesses for the defense. However, they were not called upon by Mark and Niflo, which is their right, and it goes to show that indeed they weren't exactly needed. However, let me say this: maybe Diddy would have, well, again, to be guilty of the Mann Act, it was pretty much a technicality. So they knew they were dead to rights on that. However, in terms of making their case stronger against the sex trafficking and RICO charge for racketeering, these witnesses would have been, gold dust for them. That being the defense counsel. Let's continue.
And we begin to witness some foul play at work here. See, his lawyer was Tyrone Blackburn, the same lawyer who represents Lil Rod. Lil Rod was one of the first people who sued Diddy. The feds actually used Lil Rod's lawsuit against Diddy to help structure this RICO case. So the feds was working with Tyrone Blackburn to make sure that his client Clayton Howard don't come out during the trial and don't speak out against Cassie and stays quiet until this trial is over. So Tyrone Blackburn was giving Clayton Howard the runaround when Clayton Howard was telling Tyrone he was ready to file a lawsuit against Cassie while the trial was going on.
I have been trying to file litigation for this matter against Sean Combs and Cassie since, I want to say, March of 2024, maybe February. But I was represented by Tyrone Blackburn. And Tyrone Blackburn has a substantial amount of litigation against Sean Combs that the conviction of Sean Combs was dependent on him winning a lot of his civil cases. My attorney intentionally held the filing back to protect the credibility of Cassie. Tyrone Blackburn, he intentionally held it back. Wow. I have numerous communications to him where I am directly informing him to file. He would talk to the prosecutors and then he would duck me for weeks and not file the lawsuit. So this is why it was never filed.
So just to let you know, as you can see, Tyrone Blackburn, who was also representing Lil Rod, he didn't want to ruin the bag. He did not want to ruin the bag, so therefore he quashed the file of Clayton Howard because again, that would go against him winning any money because it was quite simply um, going against um, going against the case he had with Lil Rod against Diddy. So it's unfortunate he had to go through said proceedings. However, he sought new legal counsel here. He did not want the runaround anymore, and he is now represented by another counsel, another lawyer, and here we are back again. But this just to let you know, this lawsuit would have been filed last year. But again, I think the momentum with regards to U.S. prosecution's action, the momentum regarding Little Rod's action with uh, with his former lawyer Tyrone. Uh, uh, yes,
With Tyrone Blackburn to make
there it is. To Tyrone Blackburn, his case would have been diminished, if not, you know, ethically quashed by having Tyrone Howard's case out there. So again, a little skullduggery on the part of Tyrone Blackburn in this case. I'm gonna write that name down. Tyrone Blackburn in this case, and quite simply, it's unfortunate, but he's allowed to stay in court, and his day in court is here, and he is continuing with his case. So, ladies and gentlemen, uh, shout out to Clayton Howard for continuing with things. Let's continue.
sure that his client Clayton Howard don't come out during the trial and don't speak out against Cassie and stays quiet until this trial is over. So Tyrone Blackburn was giving Clayton Howard the runaround when Clayton Howard was telling Tyrone he was ready to file a lawsuit against Cassie while the trial was going on.
I have been trying to file litigation for this matter against Sean Combs and Cassie since I want to say March of 2024, maybe February. But I was represented by Tyrone Blackburn. And Tyrone Blackburn has a substantial amount of litigation against Sean Combs that the conviction of Sean Combs was dependent on him winning a lot of his civil cases. My attorney intentionally held the filing back to protect the credibility of Cassie. Tyrone Blackburn, he intentionally held it back. I have numerous communications to him where I am directly informing him to file.
Because remember, Cassie's testimony, Cassie's lawsuit against Sean Diddy Combs, for which she won $20 million from Sean Diddy Combs, was a substantial part of Tyrone's lawsuit, of Tyrone Blackburn's lawsuit with Little Rod against Diddy himself. So he was using that basis for that lawsuit against Diddy. So to have Clayton Howard come in and say, you know what, he was not exactly a bad guy. Cassie was a co-conspirator in this. Uh, you know, that would lose give well his case against Diddy. Well, Tyrone Blackburn's case against Diddy through Lil Rod, his client would lose efficacy simply because it would do away with a lot of the claims that he makes in his complaint. So that's the reason why he quashed his evidence. And I think he chose the wrong lawyer, quite simply. That was Clayton's mistake. However, he is now seeking counsel as stated, and now he's moving forward with his lawsuit against Cassie and Sean P. Let's continue.
He would talk to the prosecutors, and then he would duck me for weeks and not file the lawsuit. So this is why it was never filed.
Tyrone also represented Lil Rod and other people. So on top of the feds pressuring him to not blow this and to not allow this guy to file litigation against Cassie before the trial is over, he is also incentivized for a guilty verdict to come for Diddy because he wants, for this guilty verdict to be in place. So then he could take this guilty verdict, take it to a civil court, and get a lot of money for his other victims who were involved with Diddy. So Tyrone Blackburn was also incentivized for him not to sue Cassie as well, because once you put Cassie's credibility at question, that right there is the foundation of this entire RICO against Diddy. Mm-hmm. When Cassie falls, the case falls.
Yeah.
And also, too, if the defense attorney gets wind that this dude is trying to sue Cassie, they would just call him in as a witness and have him testify to everything he's telling TMZ right now.
Well, remember, the defense attorneys knew about, they knew about, you'll find this out a little later. We have in our part 2 of our show here. Yeah, Clayton Howard was known to the defense attorneys, and yet they did not use him as a witness. However, the prosecution definitely knew, and they definitely didn't want his book coming out. And you'll find this out later. And they did not want his lawsuit being filed because Cassie was their star witness. Cassie, as MTR and the MTR video says here, if Cassie goes down, everybody goes down. And again, this really throws a slight to the lawsuits. Well, I wouldn't say Jane, but Mia is offering against Diddy. Well, I think that was already started. But any further case against Diddy will be marred by the fact that even though there's a lower standard of evidence, they'll be marred by the fact that Diddy got off on a racketeering and sex trafficking charge, and also Little Rod's lawsuit is going to take a hit as well. So that needs to be said. However, again, Clayton Howard would have been an excellent defense witness for Sean P. Diddy Combs. Let's go.
Now, so Clayton eventually realizes Tyrone is stalling him, so that he fires Tyrone and files the lawsuit eventually. His lawsuit is predicated on the Adult Survivors Act and also the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act, where he will list Diddy and Cassie as co-conspirators. Here's where Cassie may be in trouble. So the law allows human trafficking victims with a right to sue those responsible for their trafficking. However, even if the courts find that Cassie, isn't directly responsible for this dude being trafficked, it was expanded in 2008 to specifically include trafficking survivors and allow victims to sue anyone who knowingly benefited financially or by receiving anything of value from the trafficking crimes committed against them. This can include the buyer of the commercial sex act. Diddy was found not guilty in criminal court of trafficking Cassie.
Yeah.
The court listed Cassie as an equal participator in this. And if Cassie was the one who was paying these dues, she was the one who executed the transaction. She paid for the commercial sex. But beyond that, if they don't want to give her, she paid for the commercial sex, she undoubtedly benefited from this. She testified in court that Diddy gave her gifts. Diddy rewarded her. Diddy paid for her home. Diddy bought her expensive trips because she would engage in these free calls. That came with a $500,000 trip at Chanel. That came with cars. That came with houses. So undoubtedly here, Cassie is culpable in some way. And if you're Cassie and you're the public recipient of $30 million due to being the victim of Diddy, now you have a lot of people who was looking at that $30 million
Like,
and
that's
thinking,
some amount.
I want a portion of that pie.
Yeah.
Clayton Howard is just the first. If he is successful, trust and believe, bro, the hundreds of men that were involved in these free calls,
Coming for you.
they're coming out the woodworks too. And Cassie is now about to see herself in a situation like Diddy. Once one person sue, the entire army is coming, bro. The entire village want to cut.
So, but let's put this in perspective, ladies and gentlemen. It may be difficult. Because again, as an escort, as a sex worker, it may be difficult for them to get that piece of the pie because they were paid for their services, um, and by being an escort, so they were compensated for their efforts. Now, if there are any further repercussions due to their, to within the workplace, maybe they can get something on that. But in terms of the actual, them being victims within those acts, it would sincerely depend on the medical issues that anyone would endure. If they didn't engage in any, if they had clean sex and there was a exchange of resources for their acts in these freak offs, then it would be harder for them to prove anything. But if they were affected mentally or physically by this could be a straight up personal injury case here. I think he would get way further ahead as a personal injury case rather than a sex trafficking case because again he was a willing participant in these freak offs as being a escort. Let's continue.
But I was able to recover Clayton Howard's lawsuit, and we're going to go through exactly what accusations he's making against Cassie. He accused Cassie of trafficking him for commercial purposes, luring him with promises of gifts and favors, transporting him across state lines for prolonged encounters. She allegedly held him for days, using coercion and fraud to keep him under control. She pressured and threatened Howard to make himself available for these encounters, using financial compensation and isolation tactics to ensure compliance. Now, she would apparently withhold his clothing and phone so he wouldn't leave and he would stay for these prolonged encounters.
I know some of you guys are saying, well, if Diddy wasn't found guilty of trafficking, then why would Cassie? And you have to remember, that's why I played the clip all the way in the beginning, is that Cassie was the one that was doing the majority, the lion's share of communication with these men. So while there was not enough receipts to convict Sean Combs of trafficking, let's say some of these men have evidence of their clothing being withheld or their phones being withheld in order to ensure compliance. We don't know if there was any documented coercion or what fraud was utilized to keep people in line or under control. So it sounds like these men deserve their day in court, just as Cassie did.
However, it may be hard to prove that sex trafficking because, again, it was Diddy who was the man um, who provided compensation to the gentleman. They were, returned things, and again, I think I don't think they would get so much off on the sex trafficking case because again, they weren't given. I mean, the plane tickets and everything. Most of the financial funding for these freak offs was provided by Diddy. Yes, however, Cassie was a willing participant and may have been, been kept in these places for days through force of coercion or fraud in order to participate in these free calls. But again, these men were compensated for their time. So again, it was a con. This is leading into contract law. So it may be difficult for them to prove things, especially on the federal level, with regards to this. However, with a lower standard of evidence, it may be a bit easier for um, for Clayton Howard to prove his case. However, it's a very tough bar to overcome. However, if it was a personal injury case where these men suffered STDs or something like that, then maybe they would have a further case here. Sex trafficking is a problem because these men are compensated for prostituting themselves over state lines as escorts. Yeah, and it is true. Even if Diddy wasn't convicted of sex trafficking, probably it may be hard for Cassie to be done so as well. So let's continue.
If you closed your eyes as I read that, you would have probably almost thought like I was reading a lawsuit from Cassie to Diddy.
Yeah.
Because what he is accusing Cassie of is exactly what Cassie is accusing Diddy of. He will lay claim that he was drugged and manipulated by Cassie, and even claiming that Cassie admitted to drugging him. So Ventura allegedly drugged Howard Clayton with controlled substances, including MDMA, at triple the doses she consumed to lower his inhibitions and facilitate sexual exploitation. She admitted to drugging him after.
That's inhibitions. Okay, just continue with that. Let's go.
After he confronted her about an incident that left him disoriented and ill. She provided Howard with substances like ecstasy and marijuana to keep him awake and compliant during encounters, manipulating him into continued participation.
Now, the general sentiment between all of these Diddy haters and Cassie supporters is that, she was just under so much violence and, she didn't know what to do. Diddy was paying her, salary, it was only, or there's another option there where Cassie was benefiting not only just monetarily of listening to Sean Combs, but then also sexually in getting her rocks off in these odd things that she was involved with and wanted to continue this lifestyle and continue to wield this power because she wouldn't have been able to do it without that.
Okay, just to go through that. It's a lot of jargon, but again, shout out to MDR for making the attempt. What needs to be said is this: Diddy I mean, not Diddy. Cassie Ventura may have used all these things: ecstasy, GHB, ketamine, cocaine, MDMA, and injured the likes of a Clayton Howard, and made him comply through through force, fraud, or coercion to her sexual wishes. That's a problem. That indeed is a problem because you're doing something against their will, and this is where we get into this the sex trafficking bit, but definitely the personal injury bit because this man is he has been drugged and he's inebriated to the point of complying with Cassie's wishes. As stated here, Ventura allegedly drugged Howard with controlled substances, including MDMA, at triple the dosage she consumed to lower his inhibitions to facilitate sexual exploitation. That's a problem. That's a big problem. That's something that, because again, uh, you can't allow somebody to do this against their witness. Now, again, he was compensated, so it'd be a high bar to overcome. However, uh, this is something that Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs have to take seriously because these charge to lower um, someone's predilection, to lower someone's um, comportment and focus, for lack of a better word, from knowing right from wrong, and common sense from knowing right from wrong, and to act outside of themselves. It can be a problem. You can't use all these drugs because again you're totally injuring person. You're allowing them to engage in sexual acts that they deem deviant and not wish to participate in. So again, a personal injury case, a sex trafficking case here is something that can be had, although it is a high bar because again you have the Diddy precedent already through the federal courts. Let's continue.
Actually makes more logical sense why she would stay within a situation for this long when it was obvious that she had means to escape. I mean, she cheated on multiple people with Combs during her dating relationship with him. That doesn't sound like someone who was a damn victim, 100% victim within the relationship.
The argument that a lot of people will have that if this is true is that Cassie was acting on behalf of Diddy. Cassie was just doing things to make sure that Diddy enjoyed himself, and she was just carrying out acts or favors for Diddy. But then we have to go back to the racketeering and to the RICO that Diddy was charged with. If it's a criminal organization, then there are people under that organization who did things. The reason why Diddy had no co-conspirators was because the co-conspirator was also the alleged victim. So if Cassie was doing these things on behalf of Diddy or at the direction of Diddy, that don't make her any less responsible. She's still responsible for doing these things to someone if these things are true. When I got to this part of the lawsuit, I fell out my chair. I would think that if I'm like an escort and I'm dealing with Cassie and Diddy, the least of my worries is I could catch something. These people are extremely wealthy at the top echelon of society. I don't think they would be carrying STDs around, but apparently I was wrong because
Now, this part is where we get the personal injury aspect of things because these people were carrying STDs all along. Now, if they gave those STDs to Clayton Howard, then we have a case. Then we have something that's substantial against Cassie and Diddy because that was never part of the deal. The deal was to have protected sex within a within certain confines. I'd be paid for services. Again, this is all legal, for lack of a better word, but it is a contract. And but again, the contract would be violated if indeed Diddy or Cassie Ventura violated by allowing him to be drugged and having unprotected sex and to give that individual STDs. That's a problem. That is where Cassie can be found out, can be made to be found out. Now, the sex trafficking is one thing, but personal injury in this instance, in obtaining these STDs, that is something completely different. That is something where Clayton Howard definitely has a case against Sean P. Diddy Combs and, most importantly, Cassie Ventura. Let's continue.
according to Clayton Howard, Ventura initiated and insisted on unprotected sexual contact, disregarded Howard's safety, which led him to contracting chlamydia from her. When she was in court, Cassie did say that like she had like extreme like infections.
Damn.
That like it would go like weeks. Her vagina will still be hurting, and that Diddy won't care. He would try to get it cured up quickly so he could get back to freak off. So she already admitted in court that she would have these like infections so bad that after a while, like the medication was no longer working, and like that's how frequently she was getting these infections. Now she later admitted, according to him, to contracting the STD and blamed
R.I.P. to her
Diddy's
husband.
infidelity, showing reckless regard for Clayton's health. Her action resulted. Now this is where it gets a little messy. Okay.
Damn.
Now he's claiming that he got her pregnant. And he's claiming that she aborted the pregnancy
That's
without informing him
crazy.
until later, continuing to demand unprotected sex.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the demonic part of this lawsuit. Not only did Clayton Howard contract potentially, well, it has to be proven, allegedly contract sexual diseases from the likes of Cassie Ventura, because remember, he never had sex with Diddy. Never did have sex with Diddy. Let's make this perfectly clear, and it'll be shown in part 2. Clayton Howard never had sex with Diddy. He had sex with Cassie Ventura. She passed on to him STDs, and as stated here, her actions resulted in Howard impregnating her, after which she aborted the pregnancy without informing him until later. So yes, he knew Cassie Ventura aborted a baby that was his and gave him no recourse as to wanting her to have the baby. Again, remember, in terms of, it's my body, my choice. Remember now. So Cassie Ventura went ahead and aborted the baby and told him later. Continuing to demand unprotected sex. Guys, that is diabolical. That is demonic. That is simply pure evil on the part of Cassie Ventura. And she should be sued for it, absolutely. Giving him an STD, giving him the mental distress of having a child, of being impregnated, doing away with child, and continue to demand unprotected sex. Yes, this is truly sinister stuff for which she should be sued. Here's the meat and potatoes of this lawsuit right here. Unprotected sex and health risks. This is where it is. Personal injury to said individual, both mental and physical. This is what's going to make up his case. Let's continue.
If true, right? This is all alleged. It is wild to be a participant of a freak off in this wild ass lifestyle and not being on birth control. Crazy.
Now listen, bro. This is just trifling. Now you really can't sue someone for terminating your baby, especially not in the U.S. But yo, that just goes to show like how reckless Cassie was, specifically for her own personal.
But what she can sue for is the mental distress that it caused him to not be informed that she was pregnant and not carrying that baby to term. Not out of the realm of possibility. Let's continue.
Autonomy. You reckless, bro. You getting pregnant, like you're not on birth. Like,
Crazy.
bro, what's going on? I would think, bro, yo, if Diddy had numerous men busting in you, bro, like you would at least, I don't know, bro, get the tubes tied, get birth control, something, man. But you getting pregnant, STDs allegedly. My God. According to him, Cassie will record him in compromising positions without his consent, using these recordings for her and Diddy's mutual gratification. When confronted, she justified the recordings by demonstrating her enjoyment of them, further manipulating Howard.
Wow.
Because there were times, by the way, where like Cassie and the escorts would do things by themselves when Diddy couldn't make it, and she would record it, I guess. Now, deception and false pretenses, Ventura.
Now remember what he said there, because again, Cassie would have freak offs with Diddy, and Cassie would have sex with Clayton Howard without Diddy. Don't get it twisted. She had affairs with Diddy. That's what got Diddy upset, because one thing that Diddy is, more than anything else, he is very vindictive, and he's very jealous, and he gets very angry if he's slighted. Ergo, the Intercontinental Hotel matter and the the beating thereafter. So Cassie filmed this gentleman, Mr. Howard, without his consent, because he was there to have sex. He wasn't there to be filmed. And again, stated here, when confronted, she justified the recordings by demonstrating her enjoyment of them, further manipulating. So, nah, yeah, I got these things. Yeah, you were good. Playing with the time, playing with mine. More mental distress. Another reason for a lawsuit. Let's continue.
Ventura concealed her identity by using the alias Jackie Starr and misrepresented her relationship with Combs, claiming they were married to entice Howard into sexual encounters. In court, Cassie would testify that Diddy made her do it unprotected. However, in this lawsuit, this is why we begin to see why they didn't want this man on that stand, because he testified she lied to Diddy about reviewing Clayton's STD results to justify unprotected egg, pressuring Howard to continue despite his objections.
This is crazy.
Diddy was just convicted for transporting Cassie to engage in a freak-off, violating a Man's Act. So if Cassie transported these dudes to engage in a freak-off, then she violated the Man's Act too.
The fact that it's called...
Dang. Well said. Yeah. Cassie is also guilty of the Mann Act. She could also face imprisonment here if held to a federal case, but that won't happen. I'm sure that with her testimony, she was granted for the prosecution. But she wasn't granted lawsuits from anyone aggrieved by her sexual predilections, as we see here. Let's continue.
The Mann Act is actually super ironic too, by the way. I know that it was created on behalf of the last name of the politician who inked it, who penned it, and it was like back in the early 1900s. And it also has been utilized to convict women as well, such as...
And do remember, it was initially used, most famously in the Jack Johnson case, in which when he was sleeping with WWs and taking them over state lines to do so. The Mann Act was seen as a control against interracial dating back then, for lack of a better word. Let's continue.
Giselle, what's her name? Giselle Maxwell, the Epstein bottom B. But yeah, I just find that ironic.
The majority probably thinks Cassie is a victim in this trafficking scenario. Now, Cassie was a victim of domestic violence, 100%, no doubt. We witnessed it firsthand.
For sure.
But a lot of other people do believe that Cassie was also a victim of trafficking. So when he filed his lawsuit against Cassie, the people who believe that Cassie is a victim of trafficking, they've been really hard on this dude. I mean, they've been doxing him. They've been attacking him online, calling him a bum. So he made a video speaking up for himself, and here's what he had to say.
So good morning. I am Dave, the man who has just sued Cassandra Ventura for damages involved in the Sean Combs trafficking trial. And I'm looking through social media and I see a lot of the women out there, particularly black women like myself, who choose to victim shame me and try to do everything they can to discredit me, because the truth is that the loss of the Sean Combs trial was a loss to the Me Too movement and to hating women like the women who are trying to insult me.
Absolutely true. I told you, Me Too is going to take a hit on this, and so said, so done here by Dave, a.k.a. Clayton Howard.
So let me tell you something, you women out there who would like to insult me. This is my story. I was paid by Cassie, Cassandra Ventura, for 8 years to be her male provider. I didn't have to be the best looking guy. I was the best in bed. And because I was the best in bed, guess what? I was given this arrangement. I was coerced. I was drugged. I was manipulated with promises of money and gifts for over a period of 8 years to continue to be this woman's provider at her expense and at the expense of Diddy. Now, at the time, legally, I didn't know my rights as well as I do now. I didn't create this conflict with Cassandra Ventura. She created it with me. She's the one who decided to bring up things that happened over 10 to 15 years ago to hold Sean Combs accountable for what was a partial truth. She's the person who introduced me to the U.S. Attorney's Office. She's the person who told the U.S. Attorney's Office about our relationship. So in essence, those out there who want to hate on me, who want to say that I'm attacking Cassie, you should realize the truth. that Cassandra Ventura, your idol, did this to herself.
Absolutely true. Well said, Dave. She did this to herself. And you know who saw that too? The jury. The jury saw that too. She knew Cassie wasn't the victim. She wasn't a babe in the woods. She wasn't a deer in the headlights saying, "Oh, what happened to me? It was so innocent. I was a victim of all this physical and sexual abuse. Somebody take me away." No, she helped create these scenes, as will be seen in part two. She helped pay these men off. She helped send these men over state lines. She actually participated in actual sex with these escorts without Diddy. This girl was a freak, allegedly. This girl was an absolute freak. She contracted a crackload of sexual transmitted diseases. This woman drugged these escorts in order to have sex with her for a longer period of time. You'll hear later how long these sexual interludes would last. This man was a victim too, but again, since he's a man, he's not seen as a victim, for lack of a better word. However, Cassie is, and therefore that's why she's made a star witness. That's why they tried to suppress a lot of the evidence brought forward by Dave, including Mr. Tyrone Blackburn, because he has a case pending with Lil Rod, and U.S. prosecution, federal U.S. prosecution office, U.S. Attorney's office, because that would damage their star witness's testimony. They wanted his book. They wanted his testimony. They didn't want any part of it. Why the defense didn't call him, need him? So we are here, but he was going to get his name in court. Absolutely. And for people to denigrate his reputation simply because he has a legitimate story to tell, you're a bunch of hypocrites. Let's continue.
She exposed herself to liability when she got on the stand and decided to mention me as the male escort who was with her when she overdosed and Diddy made her have sex with him. That was a lie, people. Cassie had just woke up from sleeping 8 hours. Myself and Sean Combs were exhausted. We wanted to go home. Cassie's the one who forced that sexual encounter. People, she tells you that Sean Combs made her have sex on her menstrual cycle. I can't speak for anyone else but myself. But I know the one time that did happen, that Sean Combs was not responsible for that. That Cassie, in a drunken, intoxicated, hormonally imbalanced state due to her period,
Speaks well.
manipulated and forced herself on me during her menstrual cycle. And what I mean by that is I had no knowledge she was on her menstrual cycle because the room was completely dark. She manipulated the room.
You couldn't smell the
Imagine doing some
pennies.
freaky things when you were younger to
Let me also just say this. I find it also interesting that the same people that will ride high for someone of the image of a Cassie are not the same people that when someone else comes out claiming to be a victim, even after hearing everything that we've heard within the court case, that then they turn on that same person just because he's a man.
Excellent point there by MTR. Just because he's a man, I want to hear from you. You're a victim as well. You're a victim of physical and mental abuse. You are a personal injury victim. You deserve your day in court. You deserve to have your story told about these proceedings because he signed no NDA. Paid for his services, allowed to move on. However, it came to this tumultuous case, and it came to the day in which Cassie herself wanted to get paid, ladies and gentlemen. Her career was in the tank. She was married to a personal trainer who would never reach the levels of wealth and opulence and power and status that Diddy did. But what she could do is take a good chunk of that for herself and her new husband, with whom she's taking sexual transmitted diseases too. Yeah, she gonna have to take a lot of pills for a long time for all the freaky stuff she did. And believe me, it was hella freaky, as you'll hear in part two. This girl, knew no bounds with regards to her sexual deviance. No chance that this lady was a victim. And the jury saw that. And now she's about to see herself in a courtroom very, very soon. Because Diddy wasn't the only one who created victims here. Cassie Ventura did as well.
There is a legitimate belief that men cannot be victims within this. This, amongst many other reasons, is why the internet gender war continues to persist. Literally the exact same story, flip the genders, and all of a sudden y'all don't believe them.
Make some extra cash. But then you grew up and you moved on. You became a social activist.
But do remember, we have to believe all women, right? That's what the Me Too movement told us. Believe all women, no matter the circumstance. And if a man speaks against you, cast him asunder as a liar and a clout chaser. Right? The pendulum swung one way, it's definitely swung to the other. And it's still there. That's why this Diddy case, in which Diddy was acquitted of the activities of sex trafficking and racketeering, the RICO charge, is a huge slight towards the Me Too movement, because they had 6 female lawyers working for the U.S. Attorney's Office who wanted to put Diddy under the jail. 6 white women lawyers who wanted to put Diddy in and under the jail. But they couldn't do it because their case wasn't substantial enough. And the jury of 8 men and 4 women saw right through it, to a point where the one who needed convincing of the verdict was the only one outstanding was the one who wanted the sexual trafficking and the RICO charge to stick. Everybody else was pretty much saying, no, he wasn't guilty of that. We can see through all this. If they can see through all this, a lot of these supporters of Cassie Ventura should see it too. Let's continue.
Activist, you're now protesting against the police, protesting political causes, and then you look up and your name is being listed in the biggest case, probably in like the modern era, listing you as a male escort, listing all the nasty things you did for money 10, 20 years ago. I think you'll be upset too, and you'll probably have a vendetta against the person who brought this upon your life. You'll probably hate the person who dug everything up and brought you right back into this when you were trying to move on. Because you can find multiple videos about him protesting the police, protesting against the police, like protesting police brutality. So it looks like he was trying to be at least an activist or at least get into politics, but now those prospects is over with, bro. Can you imagine voting for a mayor who was raw Cassie in front of Diddy? Like, cut it out, bro. Like, that day is over with. Like, those days is done for. So, listen, man, I don't know. The vendetta against Cassie does throw a wrench into this, because having this much vendetta and hatred for Cassie would probably, I don't know, incentivize you to kind of add some juice to some things regarding Cassie and Diddy. But I guess we'll find out in the court of law, man.
Shout out to Flacco. Again, I'll leave his video down in the description box down below.
Sorry, it is Flacco, and he was on, I believe, the No Jumper podcast. He still works there with well, yeah, with Run 22. I don't know what his name is, anyways. But he works on the No Jumper podcast. He's been working there for a few years now. Well, great contributor there, and he's done a fabulous job here. And yeah, let's give it up to him for that. Sorry, I didn't catch his name earlier, but it is Flacco. It is Flacco. But yeah, let's just end it here. Thank you very much to MTR for that introduction to the lawsuit against Cassie Ventura. So we're going to end it here tonight, but let me just finish off by saying this, ladies and gentlemen. That off and start this. Cassie, as shown by Clayton Howard, aka Dave, he has a story to tell, and he has injuries against him that deserve to be told in the court of law. Now, again, he says that he was sex trafficked, but as a male escort, that'll be a high bar for you to climb over because, again, you come in with dirty hands, quite simply. Um, so, if in legal jargon, that is, and for him to say that you were a sex worker and yet you consider yourself sexually trafficked, and you were compensated for sex trafficking, it's gonna be hard. But however, what you can win is through the mental and physical anguish you underwent by participating in these breakups. Yes, that is where it's at. And tomorrow night, we're gonna have a special talk live just before I go on vacation to cottage country here in Canada for a week. Um, we're gonna have one more show with regards to this case, and we're gonna hear more from Clayton Howard, aka Dave, in this instance, and let him have his say on today's proceedings. And believe me, it is wild. What he has to say about Cassie Ventura and about the freak offs with him and Diddy, including Diddy, it's very, very wild. If I will have the if I'll show that off on the day. But again, what I wanted you to do today is to present the case against Cassie Ventura. She has been brought. She has been a complaint has been filed against her. I believe in New York court. I believe it's New York court. I'd have to get to those court documents, but a case has been filed against her, and she has a lawsuit has been filed to the tune of I don't know. I think it's about well, it's a good amount of money. I'd have to go into the court documents. I think I will do that tonight. Give you a further uh, breakdown of that on Talk Live tomorrow night, and we're going to hear from Clayton now, Howard, aka Dave, tomorrow. He's written a book. He has a lawsuit pending after being danced around by Tyrone Blackburn. This should have been filed last year. However, it was his that lawsuit was quashed at the time, and he was forced to seek out new counsel, for which he did, and now his lawsuit is coming out today. Well, which is quite poignant actually, because I think it's serendipitous for him to file the action now, simply because uh, post Diddy trial, post Diddy verdict, I think he'll get more traction through his lawsuit now than it did before. Because again, Cassie, everybody saw the Cassie tapes; she was seen as a victim, and again, it would have never seen the light of day. But I think now is the better time to raise such activities and also to launch his book, which may should make some good reading for some, a good bedtime reading for others, and I don't know, a bit of foreplay for other people. But we'll leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live. We got a nice tight hour here, and tomorrow night another tight hour. We're gonna hear from Mr. Howard. We're gonna get it all seen too because it's minutes to 11 now. We're gonna leave things here and get onto this J game. But tomorrow night, a good hour. We're gonna get it in on a special Talk Live, and we're going to talk about hear from Clayton Howard, aka Dave, here tomorrow, in which he will tell his side of the story and tell the relationship he had with both Cassie Ventura and Sean P. Diddy Combs, and well, it's guaranteed salacious, guaranteed heated, and you will not want to miss that. So thank you very much for joining me here at Talk Live on IG and YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We got it in on Instagram. We got it in on YouTube within the hour, performative hour. So we're gonna try and do this more often. So thank you very much for joining me here at Talk Live. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and we're gonna say good night